Hi, Tina.
Hello from
How are you
France.
doing?
I feel special.
No, believe me, I am the lucky one here. Thank you for your time. Thanks a
Thank you.
lot for taking the time to meet with us today.
Thank you.
We are happy to have you because of your extensive uh, communication skills. Know your probably your extensive experience, 32, maybe even 33 years today that you are helping couples either get back together or at least knowing where the knowing where the problems are, and maybe not always like the books are saying,
Yeah,
but helping people with real strategies, real tactics that they can implement on a day-to-day basis. And this is what we are going to discuss today.
that's
So
awesome.
thank you.
You're welcome. And it is really a privilege for me, especially that my roots are in Belgium. So I bragged this morning to my kids. I said, guess what? I'm being interviewed from somebody in France. Can you imagine? So I had to brag. Um, it really is an honor, and I'm glad that you mentioned that unlike the books or maybe like a lot of professionals, I am I would call the detox doctor of relationships.
Yes, we
I
spoke
Yeah,
about detox, but
yeah,
when
detox.
you say detox, I mean, my mind is going to nutrition. So what do you mean by detox here?
Well, and you're right to go there, and that's why I use the word. If you're familiar with addictions or nutrition and health, the first thing they do before they get you on the program, right, is detox you. So
Exactly.
many times if you're starting on a health thing, the doctor will say, look, we need to get all those toxins out, and spend some time detoxing. And so in relationships, it's the same thing. Most of us want to fix the problem. I'll never forget when, I was my first problem and how I got involved in all this 30 plus years ago, maybe a little less. You're aging me too much there. Maybe more like
Sorry for that.
25 years ago. But it was with my parenting. It wasn't marriage at first. It was with my parenting. And I couldn't figure out why it was that at a certain age, my daughter, my oldest, was 8 years old, and I could no longer hug her or nurture her. I was rejecting her and pushing her away. And, I was already a counselor then. So I knew what I was doing was very harmful.
Yes.
And I read the books, and I tried to find help. And finally, I went to a counselor, but that didn't go well for me because he was trying to talk about my past. So I didn't want to go to my past. I'd worked really hard to get past it. I tried very hard to not think about my childhood and the pain of my childhood and the loneliness of my childhood and the rejection in my childhood. I didn't want to think about that day I got on an airplane in Belgium when I was 8 years old and I was waving goodbye to my grandma and grandpa that were the only love I knew, right? They were the ones that nurtured me. I was 8 years old. And here now I am, my daughter's 8 years old, and I'm pushing her away, right? So I start seeing loneliness in her eyes. I start seeing the pain that was in me in her, and I'm pushing that away. And so when I went to a counselor, he tried to go into how I grew up and the pain of my past. And having grown up as a Christian in an evangelical church, I kind of pulled out my Bible and said, I'm not supposed to look in the past. That's all in the past. You can't change the past. So I used all my religious rhetoric
Yeah.
to to not face that. And that's where I learned that without resolving the past, you can't, no book on communication is going to help you,
Yes.
right? I had a root in me of rejection. If that root was not resolved wherever it started, and for me, it probably started right from birth because my mom really did not want a child at 16. So she got
Oh,
married at 16 to get out
okay.
of an abusive home,
Yes.
and back then they got married early,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so she did not want a baby right then and there. And so right from the start, I was rejected. Well, buried emotions are not dead emotions. I'm going to repeat that, okay? I wish I could say it in French. Buried emotions are not dead emotions. That means I buried all that stuff, and this counselor saw that. He saw this rejection didn't
And
start with this
it
little girl.
resurfaced actually. It resurfaced when your daughter was 8 years old.
Yes, it resurfaced. It resurfaced when I started looking at my marriage. I started looking at friendships. It resurfaced many times. It's
Yes.
just that I could ignore it. Now I couldn't ignore it because I was hurting a child. See?
And
So
that's amazing that you saw it.
I saw it because I saw the same pain in her eyes, right? It's just that I couldn't connect it to my own at that time because
Mhm.
I'd spent too long building the walls around my heart from
That
that.
actually you built a jail.
Yes, I did. I built a jail that I lived in, and there was no key for it. And the counselor tried to open it, and it was not going to happen. So that's really where it started.
Mhm.
I only lasted 3 times with that counselor, and he kept wanting to poke, there. And I said no. So the rejection carried on till she was 10, to the point then that it was affecting my marriage. And so my husband said, we either get help, this isn't working. He was fed up. He was seeing what I was doing to my little girl. Yet I had a son, that was 3 years younger. No problems there. He got all the nurture.
Ah,
And where it really came to light is where my little girl said, why does mommy love my brother and not me? Right now, I believe there's a
very good.
lot of parents, there's a lot of children, there's a lot of people that feel they're screwing up. But I heard part of your story in your own marriage. And really, it's not that we don't want to fix it, it's we don't know how. Or we maybe, like I did, I wanted to fix it, I went for help, but I rejected the help.
Yeah.
So when couples come to our workshops, because we do 3-day intensive workshops, about 30 hours in 3 days, and what we're looking for is the root. See, the counselor was trying to go to that root of rejection for me, and I wouldn't let him go there. So I've learned that to detox, you've got to get rid of the root. My husband, I'm a widow now. My husband passed away 7 years ago, but we did this work together over 20
Nice.
years together. And one of the things that I learned from him was he grew up on a farm. And he said, when you weed in the garden, you've got to get the root out. Because if you just weed, he used to call it weed whacking, if you just get the top, they're still damaging the good stuff underneath. And so I think
That's
of
a
my
good point.
heart that way. Yeah. So I can picture that. I can think, okay, so the whole time I was looking good on the outside. We looked like the perfect church family. As a
Yeah.
matter of fact, at that time when I started rejecting my daughter, I was actually involved in our church with children. I was the children's leader. I led children every Sunday, and can you imagine the guilt I carried with that? Here I was teaching them how to be loving, how to love each other, how to obey their parents. And I was telling the parents how to, treat their children so that they would be honored. And on the other side, behind closed doors, in my prison, like you called it, right, I was rejecting my very own child. Yeah. So that's how we started.
Uh, Part of what you are doing, and really the probably the thing that I'm most interested in is how you work with couples that are damaged in a way,
Yes.
and they when they have children,
Yes.
because actually it's not, I mean, here is what I here is what I struggle with at times. Guys, you have to make date night compulsory. Okay, in theory, well, I like to say one day I'll live in theory.
Yeah.
In theory, I love it. I have no problem having date nights with my wife, except the fact that I have 3 boys. I have 3 children. They are young. I have to plan a lot of things in order to have 2 hours with my wife.
Mhm.
And the demands of the everyday life, when you are in a long-term committed relationship, I feel that they are taking over everything else.
Yes. So relationships, you've said a mouthful there. You were talking, but you were talking about 95% of families with children and work and
I
mortgage
believe
and
so.
on and on and on, right? Life gets busy, so it needs to be intentional. And but even before you get to that, that problem only arises because we let everything else, including the children, be more important or more pressing, or you choose the most immediate thing. Of course, if your child is sick and you've got a date night plan, you're going to take care of the child.
Of course.
But that's life. If there's an emergency at work, yes, but most of us don't even have intentions of planning it. And yes, it takes a lot of planning. I am, I'll give you an example. I do work with a lot of celebrities, and one problem with one couple that I was working with was, do you know what it takes for me to plan what she wants, which is a date night? And I said, yeah, probably takes security, probably takes this, probably takes that. And I said, but you manage to do that when you have to do it for work,
I
right?
love that.
Manage to do that when you have to do it for other reasons that equals, but you can't spend, you know, a whole, because she wants to go out, right? So you can't do what it takes because it's not a necessary thing in your mind. When it becomes necessary, I used to say this, before I was diabetic, right? If I wanted to have a piece of cake, I didn't count the cost. I just thought, oh, yeah, that looks good. I'll have it. Now I knew it wasn't good for me. I
Yeah.
knew I shouldn't have it. I knew that all the reasons to not have it were the same before.
Yes.
But once I got the diabetes, it was like, now it's life and death. So many times, that's how we make decisions. A date night is not life and death. So therefore, right, you let everything else crowd because it takes a lot of planning, because to spend 2 hours with her is going to take. But what if that intention gives you till death do you part? Then
Then,
does it become
then
about
another
life and death,
story.
right? What if I told you, you don't put intention into that relationship, your kids, you don't have to worry about them. They're going to be raised by single parents and maybe other parents that aren't theirs, right? So when you count the cost of what could have started at the beginning, see, when my marriage started, no, actually, before I said I do, both of us agreed that whenever there was going to be disagreement or fighting, I'm Italian, okay? So to go into marriage thinking we weren't going to fight, I let him come right to the table and say, you're Russian, I'm Italian, there's going to be sparks, okay? And there might even be, weapons of warfare. But one thing we both agreed on, no matter what we did to each other, was we would never name call, and we would never, ever, ever use the word divorce in a fight. That doesn't mean that divorce wasn't a possibility,
Yeah.
but not in a fight, not when we were both with our armor up, or our boxing gloves up.
Mhm.
That was not allowed in the fighting ring. Okay. That saved my marriage when infidelity happened. Because you see, most people, when a big trauma happens, because they don't have intentions, because they don't have rules of engagement, the
Yes.
first reaction, the knee-jerk reaction of being angry, I had every right to be angry. He was unfaithful. Sad, mad, you know, devastated. Like my whole world had just fallen apart in less than 30 seconds, right? If I had not had that mindset that this fight could not be end in divorce unless it was a healthy decision. So I'm not saying divorce wasn't on the table.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it would not be while I was heated, because this is what I say to my clients: high emotion, low intelligence.
Oh yeah.
Right? So high emotion, low intelligence. So we wanted to make sure that however we were going to resolve this, it was going to be in a healthy place, right? So we both knew that, to not even talk about it in that moment. Once the reveal happened, it was like, okay, we both go to our corners and let this, especially for me, let this just, I have to go from here to here right now because everything was muddled, right? Now that sounds like easy steps. It's not, because you see, we'd already
Yeah.
built that in.
You took actually the worst. I mean, a lot of times, I mean, infidelity is the worst.
It is in marriage. It is.
It is like a nuclear bomb right there. I'm
Right?
how do you, well, I am interested now. And maybe if it's too personal, I'm sorry, really.
Oh, hey, look at Mohamed. I wrote the book on it, The Other Woman. Okay, so it's
How
not
bad
personal.
is the
Every
other
detail
woman?
is in here.
So basically, I mean, if I'm judging by the title, you consider it as a maybe, as a path to healing.
It was for us. And that is why we do the work that we do now. The best 20, we were married 32 years before he passed away.
This is so.
The last 20 years, okay, were the best years of our marriage. Now, 2 of those years in that 20 was hell on earth. It was something we had to walk through. But we started what we do now with marriages because of it. Because even infidelity, you said it, is the worst thing that can happen in marriage. People think that, a spouse dying is the most devastating. And trust me, I still miss them every day. And it's been 7.5 years, okay? But I will choose death. No, that's the wrong way to put it. Not choose death. I would go through the pain and the grieving of death over the pain that we experienced of the affair. And we got to the other side. Most people don't get to the other side.
Okay, so now I want to ask you. So basically, I mean, it happened after 12 years together,
Actually, it was, about, my daughter was, it happened between 13 and 14 years. Yeah.
and at that moment, you think, obviously, you think, I'm done. He is a cheater. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to. But you stayed.
I
And
stayed, to be honest, because, and this is the advice I want to give anybody who's listening that's experiencing this: make sure you have good people around you that,
your social network, I agree.
yes, because you know what? That one person that spoke those words to me began that road of healing. All she said was, and it already went with my mindset. So she reignited what I believed. She said, Tina, hold on. Don't make any decisions right now.
Yeah.
I know and I feel that he got caught up in a trance. And when I heard that word trance, I started thinking, well, what does that look like? It looks like when somebody's not thinking, right? Whenever you confront a person who's had an affair or who has been unfaithful or who steals anything that you know is wrong,
Yes.
I know what am I going to do? Look at him and say, well, didn't you know it was wrong? Of course they know it's wrong, you know? So that's not the question. The question is really, what made you follow through on what was wrong, right? And that's where that helped me understand in that moment of temptation, in that moment of the trance where you're not thinking logically, you're not using your intelligence, you're using your high emotions, the attraction, all of that, right? That moment that you need. With Ron, it wasn't about the sexual relationship. It was about at that time, now go back again to what I said earlier. I didn't know how to nurture. Okay. So when my husband was a happy guy, got up in the morning, was like, it was a great day, right? But he was going through a hard time with his mom's death. And I'd never seen him like that. I'd never see him shut down. I'd never see him not wanting to go see her at the hospital. Like, I'm going, get going. Like, you don't have a choice here. Your mom's dying. There was no empathy there. There was no sympathy. I didn't know how to do that, right? That prison, those walls that I protected
Exactly.
myself came back up again, right? And this time it was towards my husband. Well, he had never needed nurturing before. So that wasn't our marriage dance. He was there for me and the kids, not us for him. He was the emotional support in the family. So I remember saying to my best friend, can you just help him through this?
Like it's the other one. I mean, it's her job, not mine.
Yes. So it was the other woman. And she was my friend. And I said, you've had your parents die.
Oh.
So can you just do something? So with that, me reaching out for help, when you have vulnerability, so there was vulnerability on his end, right? Because he was hurting and his wife should have been the one there. Didn't know how. Again, we go back to, what you shared about your own personal experience. You don't know how. I didn't know how to be there, to have empathy, all of that. So I asked her because she could relate to it. Well, it brought back the pain in her. So now they connected on an emotional level. And I'll tell you, most infidelity does not start with sex unless you're going out to buy it. Okay. And that's then a different story. That's an addiction. So very different. But most infidelity is two people connecting on a level. So I remember my husband, as we got into this work after we healed and we started working with couples, he would say to the men, if it feels good at work, when a woman compliments you, even the simple words of saying, wow, that was a good job, right? If that feels good and you're looking for more from that person,
I love it.
run, run. You already know you're crossing that trance line. You're about to go into a trance because now you're looking for it. You're wanting more of it. And of course, you're going to get home to a wife that's been raising 3 kids or that's been at work and now she's home trying to get everything ready. And you're the last thing on her mind. But this
I
other one thinks you're better than,
I
life spread.
am. So basically, I have exactly the same thing with the mothers at the school of my kids.
There you go.
I I never allow myself to stay in a conversation more than 5 minutes.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
I know I know that she wants attention, and I know I want it also.
Yes. Yes.
That's the thing. I am not gonna lie. I like seeing myself through her eyes.
Yes. Yes.
So
And
when
that's very human.
yes, it
That
is.
is why we need to have guards around ourselves. But here's what I share. What if I could have that feeling every time, which I tell you, when I tell you this, that the next 18 to 20 years of our marriage before he passed away were the best. Why? because we learned that's what was missing. That date night you talk about isn't just 2 hours with your wife, it's 2 hours with your girlfriend. There's
Yes.
difference, right?
Courtship.
So
Courtship. I like to say that actually,
yes,
if you can keep it
courting and keep
courting.
it different and keep it exciting and keep it, there's and scientifically there is a hormone in us, it's called oxytocin, and it's in us, and it's called a bonding, and it usually only happens, it's funny, it happens, and now I'm going to get real personal, it happens 3 ways. The first way is in courtship, when you first have that attraction, okay, and it's going crazy, those hormones are going crazy. That's how you produce it. And that's when you can't stop thinking about them. You want to hold them, you want to touch them, you can't get enough of them.
Mhm.
It's called a bonding hormone, okay? The second way it happens is during sexual orgasm. So it happens then. So, and then the third way for a mom, it happens during breastfeeding. That rises up. So it's a bonding hormone that wants you so close, right? And it makes you really close. So in an affair, or when you start pursuing someone, or those feelings that you're getting or they're getting, that you have to, that's that chemical thing happening in you. Whoa, I want more of that. You got to cut it off because it's in the brain now. It wants to rise up. So how do you do that with your wife? Well, you do that by keeping it fresh, by keeping it new, by keeping surprises, by keeping adventure, by keeping, that's the only thing that creates that, is sort of the bonding part. But if it's the same thing every time, if it's the same way every time,
Yes.
then it gets, I tell every woman that's been married a while, I said, every woman needs a black trench coat, and they should not know why you've got a black trench coat, right? You should surprise them so that every time they see that trench coat, they know they're in trouble. We went to a party one time, it was a Christmas party, and I did not want to go. I did not want to go. My husband said, we have to show up. Like, we can't just not go. Right. And I said, okay, all right, fine, we'll go. I really didn't want to go. I didn't want to be with people. And so I put my black trench coat on. It was winter, it was Christmas time. And we get to the door, and I said, the host is about to ask me for my coat. And he said, yes. And I said, there's nothing underneath the coat. He
Oh
goes,
God.
excuse me? He goes, I'm naked underneath the coat. He goes, you're not. I said, do you want to peek? Well, we ran away from that door before he could ring that doorbell so fast, but I don't have to say the rest, right? Let your imagination do the trick. We didn't make it home, that's for sure. But that was something that, was
That's
spontaneous.
crazy.
I'll tell you what, I could give you dozens of times where surprises were the key to keeping it fresh, right? Everybody has their way. For me, that was something, I know he loved surprises. So I don't like surprises. So he couldn't tell me there was a surprise, right? So if he was taking me on a date, he couldn't be drumming me up for it because that got me anxious. So you do need to know your spouse,
Yeah.
right? Because you can't go from your own what would feel good to you.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, there's a good Bible verse that says, treat others like you want to be treated, except in relationships, except in marriage. You have to treat that person like they want to be treated, not like you want to be treated.
Now it is most interesting because what you are talking, basically, I'm relating it to the five
Yeah,
love languages,
5 love languages. Yes. So that is exactly what I'm talking about.
where actually, I mean, this is something that I learned quite late. I have been 21 years with my wife. I like to touch. I like to feel. I like to, which is not something a lot of men have.
Right.
My wife actually was coming from a place where this is not how men act. They
Mm.
don't want, they want to be men.
Touchy-feely. Yeah.
Exactly. They want to be men. The only place where they touch is actually in bed. And that's it. That's enough.
Yeah.
And I wasn't coming from this place where,
Right.
and she is something, she is someone that cares a lot about gifts. I could not care less about gifts. I don't even for for 25 more for more than 25 years I did not celebrate my birthday. I do not care about it. Not 1 second. And the thing is, if I bring a small flower home, my wife is just ecstatic.
Yeah.
She's happy.
And it took no effort.
It took no effort whatsoever. And
Yeah.
this is I love it. I love it when you say you have to speak their language.
Yes. And it's important because you could have been touching her from morning till night and holding her hand and rubbing her back and
Yes.
putting your hand, your hands through her hair, and you were giving her 100% of nothing. You were
Yes.
giving her what you want, right? Now, if she was going out and buying you gifts or planning your birthday or doing that, now she's giving you 100% of nothing. And yet we walk around saying things like, but I gave you everything. No, you gave
Yeah.
nothing because it's not what I wanted. If I'm not thirsty and you bring me a cup of water and I'm hungry, what's that water going to do for me? It is not going to satisfy my hunger, right? I'm not thirsty, I'm hungry. So it's again, people perish because of the lack of knowledge, because they don't know how to. And when I shared with you that really the detox part, if we could go back to that, how did we heal? And it really was um, by, first of all, now I call it, we put a name on it now, we put a program into for it now, but it's called the R3 factor. And so our programs are called Relationship Lifeline. And couples come in there, and it's usually, I'm glad you brought up kids, because I don't do this for marriages. I know people think I'm rude in a way that I don't care if you stay married or not. Like, you're an adult, you can get to make your own decisions. I grew up in a very Italian controlling family, so the last thing I wanted to do as an adult is be controlled, right? I thought, when I grow up, you can't tell me what to do. That's the mindset I had. So who am I to tell you what you can and cannot do? So if you want to get a divorce,
Go
go
ahead.
spend $30,000 and get yourself a divorce, do whatever you want. You're an adult. So why do I do what I do so passionately? And it's because what you said, children.
Children,
They did not ask for the divorce. They didn't ask to be born either,
first and
right?
foremost.
So, and I love your story that you shared with me, because that's why you did it. That's why you went out and looked for help, however you needed to get help.
So for
You
you,
saw,
we discussed a little bit before actually hitting
yeah,
the record button. So very quickly, after 10 years together with my wife, we had our first son, Adam, and after 6 months, I sat 3 o'clock in the morning. I just started to talk with myself. My wife was sleeping. She didn't hear like half of it. And I was just repeating, I didn't sign for that. I didn't sign for that. And I didn't sign for that. It was the first time I spoke about separation with my wife. And the first time I said,
I didn't
I'm
sign
done
for
with
this.
you.
Yeah.
And why I stayed, because my parents have been together for more than 40 years now.
Mhm.
I cannot do that. I would not resolve myself to do that to a kid. I can't do that to a kid. So basically, this is the whole story.
Well, and you were considering
So yeah,
separation.
I mean, after 10 years, here I am speaking for the first time about divorce. about separation and saying, I didn't sign for this, I didn't sign for this. And I could not resolve myself to do that to a kid.
Yeah, yeah. And again, here's what you've just said to me. Because of your parents, and how you were raised, because of what you saw, heard, and experienced, you had at least the mindset that I can't do this to this innocent child.
I call it the template.
Yes, exactly. That's a good word for it. And so now imagine that you did not have that. Imagine that you had come from divorced parents.
Exactly.
Imagine that, so that's what we do. That's how we are different from a counselor, maybe that uses just, most couples, and it's not the counselors. The counselors are good. Like any profession, there's good ones, there's bad ones, there's in between ones, but most of us have been trained to help people with conflict resolution and communication. But to me, that's called weed whacking. Most of us, if you go to a good counselor, you're going to teach them about the love languages. That's awesome. But if there's stuff underneath that's not being dealt with, for me, it was rejection. For me, it was vows that I made that I would never get hurt like that again. So when my husband became very vulnerable and needed nurturing, I thought, no, I can't do that. That's going to hurt me. And now these aren't conversations I'm having in my mind. These are the templates. I'm just reacting and acting out, because of
Are
what
you
I saw.
conscious at that moment?
Yes, it's unconscious at that point. And so you have to get into that unconsciousness. And that's where I realized that most marriages don't end because people want them to end or because they've even stopped loving each other. Most affairs don't even happen because you don't love your wife or your husband. Most of it happens because you don't know how to fix the downward spiral. You don't know how to stop. It's like you're in a mudslide and you can't stop. There's nothing to grab onto because what's underneath in the root is rotten. So there's nothing to hang on to. There are no roots. And when my husband and I started healing, we began to look at what is it that we need to face. And I'll never forget, for me, I call it my God moment, because it was the morning after that I'd heard those words. My husband was not in town. His mom had died. He was visiting his dad, who lived, about an 8-hour drive away. And he had gone for a few days to visit his wife. And that's when the truth was uncovered. And so I call him and I say, is it true? The worst 3 words, and again, I'm going to point to the book. It's got all the details in there, but the worst 3 words I ever heard in my married life was, it is true. So he was admitting the affair had happened. And I was just so devastated. And now I'm hearing it on the phone, right? And, there's a lot of details around that. But when I hung up and I went to bed, I remember not sleeping, that ugly cry. Anybody who's been through it knows exactly. And you're on the toilet, it's coming out from the top, the bottom. I mean, you're just sick, And I remember waking up from no sleep and looking in the mirror in my bathroom. And my eyes were out to here. I didn't recognize myself. And all of a sudden I start the self-condemnation. Well, no wonder you're an affair. Look at what you look like. And now I'm putting myself down and I'm thinking it's all my fault. And then all of a sudden something rises up in me and goes, he's a blah, 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 blah. And now I'm with, I see him and I see her and I'm just, beside. And then comes the moment where I go, God, how could this have happened? Like, we didn't even have a bad marriage, I didn't even know we were in trouble, right? So it was in that moment that I call it the moment. I don't know if you guys know the movie It's a Wonderful Life, right? It's a Christmas movie. It's about a man that wishes he wasn't born. And all of a sudden there's, you know, like an angel that comes and shows him all the things that would have happened if he wasn't born, you
Yeah.
know. And then he starts seeing the other side. He goes, okay, I want another chance. And he comes back and he's now a family man. He's a different man. He has this moment.
Oh,
And I felt like I was the actor in that movie, you know. And I start to see, but the difference is, you know, that I feel this voice in the mirror. I call it my God voice, but I see it, I hear it, and I don't believe what it's saying, because it's saying, imagine, stop crying, and imagine you had a part to play in the downward spiral of this marriage. I thought, there's no way I'm taking responsibility for his affair. That's not even right. And that's when I had that moment of, no, I didn't have anything to do with the affair. No, I did not make the decision to do what was wrong. Nobody should ever take responsibility for that part. But what part did I have in my marriage where things were breaking down, where I couldn't be there when he needed me the most, where I vowed, you know, as an 18, 20-year-old, never to love like that again because it hurt too much. You know, that's the part I'd forgotten and buried. But remember when we started the program, I said buried emotions are not dead emotions. So again, seeing myself in the mirror and realizing I'm not going to take responsibility for the affair, but if I want to be free, I need to take responsibility for what I brought to this relationship. And I didn't bring his love language to his relationship. He was the touchy-feely person. I was like your wife. That happens in bed. You know, we don't need to be touchy-touchy on the couch and you know, don't crowd my space. You know, I was acts of service, right? All those things become important, but they wouldn't have worked if I hadn't first found the root, which was that vow that I made that I would never love like that again. See, I had nurtured somebody when I was 18, 19 through death, a boyfriend, and he died. And so I'd done all that nursing and taking him to doctors and taking, so I didn't do sick. I didn't do depression. I lived with a mom that was depressed all her life. I didn't want to see that. So I interpreted when I saw depression, I married the happiest guy on earth, the most easygoing guy on earth, no pressure, no stress, right? That's what I grew up in. I didn't want that. And now all of a sudden, you know, 12 years into this, and he's got all that going on. I don't know that it's going to stop. It never stopped with my mom. Now I'm running scared. But I don't know all that until I do a 40-hour retreat. And that's where we went for help. And I started seeing the roots, not just taking care of the communication, not just taking care of, we had done communication seminars, we'd done financial seminars, we'd done all those things to improve the marriage, but the root was still there. That was
how
never changed.
long? How long between the moment where those words were uttered, it is true, until the moment where actually you went to this seminar and got taken care of the roots of the bad root? How long?
So within 24 hours, when I had that mirror moment, okay, I totally changed. It just in that 30 seconds, I realized that I could only change me, not him. I couldn't make him stay. And I definitely wasn't the one that was going to call out for a divorce. Okay. So I made that decision right there because I thought I can only be responsible for me. And I'm going to go back to my template. I'm not going to scream divorce right now because I'm hurting. I'm mad. I'm beside myself. I'm emotional. So divorce is going to be decided after we work through this. Right. So good or bad, I had to be healthy personally.
Yes.
Now, that period that you're talking about, from the mere moment, it is true, right? From that conversation till we were completely healed took 2 years. From the moment of forgiveness, within the first week, I forgave him. because I'd already experienced forgiving my mom. And I knew that forgiveness was not about him, it was about me. So no matter what he did, what decisions he made, if he chose to go with the other woman, if he decided to leave us, that had nothing to do with me or forgiveness. So I forgave quickly, but forgiveness is a decision that then takes daily work until it doesn't hurt.
Wow. You know what? This is forgiveness is a decision
That
that
you first
takes
think.
daily work.
Yes.
I
So
love
then,
it.
yes, because you can say I forgive, and many people say I forgive, but then 5 years down the road, they're still talking about the affair. I, I
True,
talk about the
so
affair
true.
every day. I wrote the book on it. I teach on it, but there's no pain attached to it. That's how you know the healing process is complete, is when you can talk about that moment where you wanted to separate from your wife was very painful, right? But today you can talk about it and there's no pain to that. Why? Because you took
Shame,
these
shame,
steps.
I have to say.
Yeah, yeah.
Shame still there. I because I don't want to see myself as that man.
But even shame, okay, is negative. And let me share with you what some of my requirements were for healing. The very first thing I said to him is we both need to forgive. We have a God that we believe forgives. So now we need to forgive each other, and for what we've brought to this. And I need to forgive the other woman. So all that has to happen no matter what the decisions are
Mhm.
that we make going forward. But in order, if we are going to move forward together as a couple, then I need two things from you. And if you can't do these two things, then we just heal and become the best parents we can be to our children because they didn't ask for this.
Yes.
And those two things were, one, because I had a root of rejection, I said, you have to choose me. We're no longer married. You broke the marriage vow. So you might as well take your ring off because we're not married. So now we have to go back to day one and you have to choose me. You want to be with me. You have a choice between her and you have a choice between me. I want to know that I'm chosen, not because I'm the right thing, because you've already done the wrong thing. So that doesn't matter. Now you're free. I'm free, right? And so that was the first thing. And I said, once you do that, I said, the second thing I'm going to require is much more difficult. I said, the second thing, because I knew my husband and I knew how shamed he would be. And I didn't know if he could ever get rid of shame. So I said, the second thing I need to happen is that you forgive yourself for being an idiot.
Uh, but it seems that already at that point you are a woman that knows her own value.
Like I said, that mere moment, that's why I call it such a spiritual moment. That what I'm saying right now that I asked for was in the first week because of that near moment. Because I realized if I went in guns a blazing and I had that moment where he's an idiot, I hate him, I can't believe he did this to his children. I was totally in blame mode. Okay. Because I had that moment of going back and seeing that I made vows. I saw all that in the mirror because I said, okay, you know, if I've done something, what is it that I did? And at that moment, I thought that spiritual moment, I thought I was going to see and recount things that I'd done wrong, like burn the dinner, not make dinner, or, be angry or yell at the kids or being a bad mom. I thought all that was going to show up. And that's not what I saw. I saw a hurting 18-year-old that was losing her boyfriend to cancer. And I didn't deserve that at that age. And when I was at his open casket and they let me go in there alone to say my goodbyes, and I looked at him, I remember saying these words. Now, I didn't remember that, but it was like that moment that I was taken back in time, right? Where I said, I will never love like that again. That pain was too much for me to ever re experience. So I didn't love my kids like that because they could die, right? I didn't love my husband like that. I didn't love, I didn't let people, I stayed behind my prison walls. You could only get so close, right? I saw that for the first time after the affair, that my husband never had my full heart. My kids never had my full heart. I was afraid of love because it hurt too much. So those are the roots that we now look for when you're going through a marriage crisis. Even before you get married, we have people come in that now are engaged, and lots of counselors and churches and organizations recommend our program as a premarital requisite because we help them uncover what they're going into marriage with. Fix this now. Look at this now, because those buried emotions are going to resurface and then they're going to be trouble. And so when we were able to do that 2-year walk, we found a program, that we could go to. And that program basically helped us unearth our story, where I was able to see that 8-year-old that was saying goodbye to her grandmother and her grandfather, the only source of love. So love had always hurt me. See that?
It's a great way of putting it. Love has always hurt me.
Yeah, because love could go away, could be taken away, and you had no control. I had no control in that
And
affair.
at that moment, you had no control. At that moment, it was done to you. You could not say no. You could not even probably even utter the words because, I mean, you are a child. You are a child. How can you say, guys, you are doing the wrong thing and let me explain you why? You can't.
Yes. And so Mohammed, that child, right, never grew up from that. That child got an experience, a thought, and saw love can be taken away. So it's better not to.
That's the lesson at that moment.
Right? Not completely. So I would still love, like I said, we didn't have a bad marriage, but when it came to that nurture, that goes deep, right? That goes deep. So that part of me, I wasn't willing to give. And there's fears on the other side of that too. And out of that program that we did, we developed our relationship lifeline. And we started what I called, now we didn't put a name on it at first, but I don't know if you guys get the Today Show in Europe, but there's,
I know what it is, but
yeah, it's the Today Show. And they came to me and said, we find your work so amazing. I'd worked with celebrities and they had seen it. Can we do a feature on what you do? So they came in and filmed for 2 days, but they needed to do 30-second sound bites to advertise the show and what they were going to be doing. So they asked me, they said, could you describe in 30 seconds what you do in 30 hours? That brings them from wanting a divorce or being separated to, no, we're in love, and we want to keep this thing together. And I said, 30 seconds? I said, I can't do that. Well, I had to figure it out. So that's where what I call today the R3 factor came in. So it's basically 3 steps that we take you through to detox. And it's called the R3. So R1, R2, R3. The R1 is to reveal. So you cannot change or heal what you don't reveal. So that's about yesterday. That's that template that you were talking about. We've got to know what our template is. We've got to know what we saw, what we heard, and what we experienced that created a mindset, that created a belief system that we operate on a subconscious level, right? People who are scared of heights didn't just become scared of heights. At some point, they've experienced fear, right? And now they don't know why, but as soon as you tell them to climb a ladder, it's like, I'd rather not, I'll take the stairs, right? So all those things can be traced back if it's not, we should have some fears, you know, like you shouldn't jump out of a plane without a parachute. That should be fearful. You know, that's got a bad end, you know. But most of the time we are knee-jerk reaction and we don't even know why. Okay. So then the second, you know, we don't want to leave you there. The second is the R2, which means to rewrite. That's about today. I can't rewrite the past. I couldn't rewrite the infidelity. It happened. Didn't matter if I didn't think about it. It didn't matter if I shoved it down. It didn't matter how many times people said you had to let go. If I didn't rewrite it, right, it was going to stay with me. So what does rewrite mean? Well, rewrite, first of all, consists of compassion, being able to see it from also another person's perspective, being able to change your perspective, being able to see it not from a place of blame, right?
Yes.
But from a place of, I get it. I can change my feelings on this because what he did was human. Not right, but it was definitely human, right? And none of us, there's not one of us walking the face of the earth, besides what I believe Jesus, are innocent. Okay. So we're all broken. There's just no innocence here. Okay. Adam kind of blew that for us. So here we go. We still living, you know, and so I had to accept that humanity, that we all falter, right? So once I was able to see that part, then I knew I could rewrite the story. Once I was able to see that I played a part in it, now I can rewrite it. It meant not just forgiving him or the other woman, it was also forgiving me for not giving my heart to my husband, who I should have given 100%. If there's anybody on earth you should be one with, it's the person you choose to marry. You know, that doesn't mean you lose your who you are as an individual, but it does mean you don't withhold, right? You are each other's. And the third is the best, which is the R3, and we call that renew. And that is about tomorrow. What do you want your life to look like? You know, in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years? Do you want it to be better than it was yesterday? Do you want it to be better than it is today? That's the renewing. And we call that the renewing of the mind, the renewing of the heart, right? So that we can love freely. Now you get the books. Now you go to communication seminars. Now you get online stuff and build. Now you're going levels, right? Because now you've detoxed. Now you're starting to rewrite the story. We all have a story, right? So now you're starting to go with new things. It's just like, you know, I like to think about a baby, you know, that transitions from crawling to walking. They're going to fall a few times. In the rewrite process, the reveal process is basically what you don't reveal. Like if I didn't get to the root of that rejection, I couldn't have fixed my daughter's story. I couldn't have loved my daughter the way she needed to be loved, right? If I didn't see the vow that I'd made, that that part of my heart would never be given again, I couldn't have loved again. So that's revealing. That's seeing man. I think you mentioned Michael Jackson, you know, seeing the man in really being the man in the mirror. Now it's looking at yourself in the mirror, you know, and how you need to change, because the only power we have is to change ourselves. So that was the R3, to reveal, rewrite, and renew. And those are what the reveal areas where we spent most of the 2 years, because we really had to go to where the anger was, where the hurts were, where our template was of doing life together, you know. And he had to go to where his trigger points were. Then we started learning about the love languages and how all these years I'd been doing things for him, like cleaning his sock drawer, because that's an act of service, you know, and he couldn't care less, you know. So he just wanted his back scratched, or he wanted me to, you know, rub his neck while he was driving. And I'm going like, why would I do that? Like, it doesn't even come to my mind, right? So those things are all great to build, right? Those are great for date nights to talk about. And, you know, for this, I learned he loved surprises and all that kind of stuff, right? So
What you had in front of you is a man, maybe, I don't know, I'm asking here, a
Mhm.
man that actually first and foremost recognized his mistake. I
Yes.
mean, first, it was no matter what is going on between you guys, he didn't have to cheat. There
No.
was other
Exactly.
solutions.
Yes.
And second, after that, maybe you had also a man who wanted things to get better.
Yes. Yes. And you have a man that was willing to do what it takes, right, to make it right for his children and his wife. And again, it took him a long time, not the first one where he chose me, that came pretty quick in that first week. But the second one where he had to let go of shame, that that was a tough one. That's what took a lot of time. And but he said he was willing. That's all I asked. Are you willing to come to a place to forgive yourself? And so, Mohammed, you have to have two people that are first of all willing to be accountable, you know, willing to um, go through the process. A lot of people that are hurt don't want to look in the mirror. They want to be a victim. This is, when I shared with you, it might sound harsh that I don't do this for marriage. I don't do this for people that want a divorce, because to me it's like, you're adults. Even when people come in pre-marriage and they come to do their premarital counseling there, my real counsel to them is, well, I tell them, my challenge this weekend is to break you up. You're here for premarital counseling. I'm going to try all that I can do to break you up, because I don't want you back in here 3 kids later. So if you guys can't handle what I'm about to uncover, if you guys can't handle the detox, most people that don't handle detox don't give up drugs. Don't give up. Don't go into the nutrition. Like, if you can't detox, you're not going to start eating healthy. You're not going to give up the heroin. You're not going to give up the smoking if you can't even go through the process of detox. So I say the same thing. If you can't detox in this room, right, marriage is not going to work. It's not going to get better because you got married. It's not going to get better because you just had a baby,
Well,
right?
actually, I hear that a lot. I mean, I hear a couple telling me from the wedding ceremony, it all went downhill.
Exactly. But it wasn't from the wedding ceremony. It was before the wedding ceremony where they thought and believed that would change, right?
Actually,
So
let's see
so
this.
the idea that I do this not for you to not get a divorce, I do it for the children. Why? Because you as an adult have the power of decision. That means you're not a victim. The children have no control. They are victims, right?
Okay.
So my voice and my work is for the true victims in the marriage or the relationships.
I find that illuminating, and I believe that honestly, you say it's harsh. I have even For me, it's even clearer than that. I just say I don't care about the couple. Really, I mean, you are adults. You go your separate ways and whatever.
What you're gonna do, yeah.
But do that as long as you don't have children.
Yes.
And maybe actually that's, I want to hear more about your premarital counseling. I mean, you said something that stuck here. I want to break you up. I don't want I don't want you to come back 3 kids later. And this is exactly the words that I had with my marriage, in front of our religious figure.
Mhm.
He told me, he told us, I never want to see you again here.
There you go. God bless that man.
He told me, I never want to see you again here. We can see each other elsewhere. We can
Yeah.
play together. We can have no problems with that. But in this room, this
Yes.
is the last time we see each other here.
Yes. Yeah. And
And
that is solid counsel. And we should be more aware and give more of that counsel, because our premarital class is the same. It's the same 30 hours. The only difference is I'm not trying to help you communicate. I'm not trying. All I want to do is help you know what you don't know. So if somebody had helped me before I got married, see that root of rejection, see that vow that I'd made that I would not love my husband at an intimate level, not, and I'm not talking sexual when I say intimate,
yes,
emotional intimacy, that I would not love him at the emotional intimacy. But I even chose a man that didn't need it.
yeah, yeah,
Subconscious.
exactly.
I chose a man.
And
Yes.
then life
And
threw
then life
something
happened. Life
happened.
happened, right? So I chose someone who wasn't needy. I chose someone that, was always the guy that got everybody going, the fun guy, the no stress guy. I made sure there was no depression, not even in his family. I mean, he had 5 brothers and sisters. They were all happy and they weren't drinking. So it wasn't like, I chose a family that was so family oriented and so like you walked into their house, there was guitars going, there was always cookies, it was a happy home. It was like my little house on the prairie, on a farm, and everybody was welcome. My house is like, if somebody was invited over, it took a week of preparing, and I didn't just bring friends over. He used to pick up hitchhikers on his way home from work and bring them home for dinner, and it was just like, wow, this is I didn't know this existed, this world. So when he became needy or I saw depression, that freaked me out. And it took me then into that subconscious of getting behind my bars, right? And say, I don't do this. I don't do life like this. So that's what we do. We take you there. We help you go through your story, right? And it's not like counseling where I'm sitting across from you. You're actually experiencing these things. So you get to spend some time, and we put you in a scenario, we put you in a place where we make you go back, right? And I can't remember who it was that said these words, but he said, you learn more from playing with a game with a man. You learn more in one game with a man than you do in years of acquaintance.
Yeah.
In other words, if I sit down and play a game with you and you're competitive and I'm competitive, I'm going to learn more about you in that 2 hours of us playing a game that I may in years of just being an acquaintance, right? So I call them games, but really they're exercises. And we put you in a pressure cooker, because under stress, people
Oh,
will go to the subconscious. And
oh,
that's the true you, right? So basically, in that 30 hours, we got a pressure cooker, and we put you in that pressure cooker and we watch the steam.
so hold on. Did it ever happen that some people got out of this counseling knowing they don't want to go to take the leap?
So here's the thing: most couples in trouble, pre-married, the pre-marrieds just come, but most people that are in crisis, that are already separated, some of them are already divorced, um, they come because of children. So that's a huge population that we have, that they want to agree, even if they disagree, but they want to agree on some boundaries with the children.
D'accord. Okay.
Now, when they get in there and the pressure starts to heat up right from the first 2 hours, we're about to take you to hell and back, right? They want out. So for 25 plus years, we have given a money back guarantee. Our program is not cheap. And you get your money back, but you have to complete and not just sit there. You have to participate. So you sign an agreement before you show up and come inside that room that in order to get your money back, you must participate and stay for the whole thing. Then, when the 3 days are done, we don't ask you any questions. If nothing has changed, now we don't promise your marriage is going to get back together, but we promise you're going to be making decisions from a healthier place. We promise you the detox. So that's how we keep most people. To answer your question, yeah, probably 60 to 70% of them want to leave after the first day, after the first 6 to 8 hours. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
It
Yeah.
is.
So,
But you know,
I don't have a smile on my face. I'm actually pretty scary. Or so they say. I've had these big guys in the class. Like I've had, there's one pastor of a church that he did a little promo, and I also go into the military and prepare couples for deployment. You know, where one is staying behind, one is going, and so I'll do a marriage seminar with them because it's been
that's
proven.
important.
Yeah, it's been proven that if their marriage is in trouble while somebody is deployed, it's really scary. They're not there. They're not fully aware. And the guys,
Yeah.
you know, obviously their commanders don't want them there in that state. So they provide these marriage things. So I'll go in, and this pastor that did a promo for it, he said, you know what? She's this little woman and she scares my Marines to death, because nobody scares the Marines. You know, these are Marines at Pendleton, and says they'll just stand right up, and you know. So I don't smile, and I'm pretty scary, but I get through to you. So you know, and I'll never forget this one couple, because we're talking about children. They were just, it didn't matter what I did. They just would not get past this certain exercise. They just couldn't get past it. So finally I said, okay, I'm going to ask you both a question. And I looked at the woman first. I said, you tell me you love your children. And she said, absolutely. That's why I'm even standing here taking this. I said, okay. And then I looked at the husband. I said, do you love your children? He goes, absolutely. I said, is there anything you wouldn't do for your children? No. I said, would you even take a bullet for them? Like, would you die for your children? And they both answered yes, unequivocally. And I said, great. So why don't we spend the rest of the weekend living for them? You die for them, but you won't live for them.
Yes.
I said, how about we just do that? Right? And I said, and what if I told you, I asked them how old their children were, like yours, they were young. And I said, how about you stop caring about yourself for the next 10 years? How about that? How about we wait till they're 18 or 19 and just suck it up and pretend you love each other for the next 10 years? Pretend you know how to communicate. And then in 10 years, you'll still be young. You'll still be, you know, most people don't even get married till you'll be in 10 years, you know, in your 30s. I said, and then start over. I said, how about that? Do you love them enough to do that? And they both looked at me, and I go, yeah, that's a little bit harder to answer. Well, that's what love looks like.
Voila.
That's what love looks like. Yes, voila.
It is. I when you ask the question this way, you are willing to die for them, but are you willing to leave, to
Yes.
live happily with that woman that actually you chose to have kids with? Nobody
Well,
said you are.
instead of saying, because happy's gone at this point, right? So they can't see happy. They've been trying happy. So I look at them and I said, now you've got two choices. Now that you've answered that, you got two choices. You can be miserable or you can be happy. Now, I can teach you how to be happy, because that's the problem. You don't know how, right? Now, it's not going to be happy every day. It's not going to be challenge free every day, because you're still human. Remember that part. You're still human. You're not always going to agree. but agree that you both love your kids. Start with that, because that's one point of unity that we have. Yeah.
It is, there is so much truth in those words. So at least we can agree on that.
Yes.
No matter, no matter where your couple, where it is in terms of happiness, in terms of, no matter what, we can agree that we love them.
Yes.
We
Yes.
can, we want the best for them. We
Yes.
want to do our best for them. It's not gonna be easy every day because we are humans,
Yes.
but at least we want to do it.
Yes. And see, it's once they leave that room, we've done the detox. Now the real work begins, right? The real work begins. And that's where, counseling and coaching and help and online groups, of course, because of COVID, I've had to start doing a lot of groups online. I mean, fortunate for me, thank God, I've been able to stay in business because we are crisis workers. And so we've been able to stay in, having groups with all the precautions we've had to take. But at the same time, we've had to start doing a lot of our personal counseling and after work, not the crisis work, but the building work after on Zoom, like we're using that sort of thing. But I wish I'd invested in Zoom back then when it all started.
Same here.
But I'd be rich today. So it's a huge, there's a huge importance in the afterwork, because we have to rewrite, right, the past. We have to do things different. We have to renew our minds and our hearts and the way we do things. And so part of that work, is online. Part of that work is counseling. But now you've got a clean base that we can build on, right? And so that's also really important for people to now set up. The first thing we do in our coaching world is set up rules of engagement. What does that mean? That means if the only thing that we can agree on is the kids, right? If that's the only thing we can agree, we're still not in love. We've gone through a great detox weekend, and now at least we've got hope, but we still don't have those mushy feelings. Well, let's start with what we do have.
Voilà.
And when we were in that first 2 years, when we were healing, we went to programs, we went to personal programs, we went to programs together, we did counseling, but we also set up rules around our family. We weren't going to do the heavy duty fighting in front of our children. We were going to fight, and we knew we were. Well, we had 8 hours that they were in school, or 6 hours, whatever it was. We were going to fight. It was when they were in school. But when they came home, this was called family. They didn't deserve that toxic stuff that was coming out of our mouth. They didn't deserve, hearing their mom saying, I hate you right now. I forgave you, but I still hate you. Those are all normal progressions of healing. Our emotions are toxic and we need to get them out, and it doesn't just happen in detox. Still doing the healthy thing is still building a new way of life. It's still rewriting. During that rewriting, there were moments where I lost it. There were moments where you felt like, I don't know, I can do this, but because we set up rules of engagement, there were things that when it was family dinner time, we didn't bring things up, no matter what. We didn't let things trigger us. So those are important to deal with. And most of the time, again, it's your network around you that's really important.
I agree. I agree. Having someone that speaks, even if it's only their truth, but at
Yes.
least they are not pouring oil onto fire.
Yes, exactly.
If
Exactly.
you have this person, it can truly go a long way. And I think actually it's time to wrap it up. I mean it was amazing. It was amazing talking to you, Tina.
Thank you.
It's thank you for sharing so much.
Yes, thank
I got to I'm gonna take those 3 R's:
yes.
real.
And I don't know if you guys can get this book, and
Well, on
for
Kindle,
some,
yeah.
it is on Amazon. If you just look up Tina Conkin on Amazon,
Yes.
you can get it there. And the R3 is in here, not just my experience. So some of the exercises are in here that we do in the class. And someone like yourself that's already done so much work, to be able to do this kind of stuff, you don't need the mean me there.
Yeah.
You don't need the stern person there. You want it. And people who want it, then there's answer of the how here. So it's The Other Woman by Tina Conkin. And, it just is very helpful because there's a lot of good exercises there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tina, it
Thank you
was a
for having me.
real pleasure.
And let me know when it airs so that I can put it out there.
Of course.